The Effect of the American Revolution on Canada by Tiggy and Megan. The Loyalists were the people who were loyal to Britain. Approximately one-fifth of people were Loyalists. Not all Americans supported the Revolution. Loyalists were persecuted by revolutionary patriots during the war, and the Loyalists were abused and their homes and farms were burnt by patriots. 80,000 to 100,000 Loyalists were forced to leave their homes in the United States of America. 30,000 Loyalists went to Canada, and they settled in Quebec, Ontario, Nova Scotia, St. John River Valley, and the islands of St. John. Some also settled in England and other British colonies. During the American Revolution, approximately 500,000 African Americans were in the 13 colonies. Most of them were slaves and they worked on plantations of the South. Like Thomas Jefferson, most men who signed the Declaration of Independence were slave owners. The economics of slavery in America created a strategic opportunity for the British. The British hoped to ruin plantations and economics of American states. It is estimated that tens of thousands of slaves crossed British lines. Once they had crossed, they became soldiers, cooks, nurses, or laborers. Some were sold back into slavery once the war was over. Loyalists who kept slaves kept as many as they could and brought them to Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. When the war ended, approximately 3,000 black Loyalists went to Nova Scotia. The First Nations felt they needed to choose sides to protect their interests once the American Revolution began. The Americans wanted the First Nations land, therefore allowing the First Nations to have little chance of staying out of the conflict. The Mohawk Nation, which belonged to the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, was now stationed in the colony of New York. The Mohawk Nation had strong links to the British, and they maintained good relations. Joseph Brant disagreed with this decision. Joseph Brant was the brother of Molly Brant, who was the companion of Sir William Johnson. Joseph Brant visited England as an ambassador in 1775 and secured a promise of lands in Quebec if the Mohawks fought with the British. The British lost the war, and in 1783 the Treaty of Paris recognized American independence and divided British North America. The negotiations made in the Treaty of Paris ignored the First Nations. The British made serious efforts to build up the English-speaking colonies. The British also wanted populations that are loyal to the British Crown, and refugees from America seemed less likely to challenge the authority of the British government and its representatives. The War of 1812 would eventually ensure that British North America would not be part of the United States of America. French-speaking Canadians did not like the British rule. British and England still had close economic ties with people living on the East Coast. The Dominion of Canada would not be formed until 1867. The Loyalists created problems for the British government. The Constitutional Act, which was passed in 1791, divided Quebec into two new colonies. The upper half was English-speaking, Protestant, and ruled according to British laws and institutions. Later, the upper half became Ontario. The lower half was French-speaking, kept French culture, was Catholic, and ruled according to French civil law. Later, the lower half became Quebec. The Constitutional Act gave both colonies their own governments. The governments consisted of an elected assembly, a governor, and two councils. The two councils were executive and legislative. The governor was always a British nobleman, and the members of council